Welcome everyone to Bell to Bell. This is kind of our flagship series on the channel.
Every other week, we're going to be looking into a wrestler's career, doing a bit of a deep dive. And we're going to, more specifically, we're going to split the wrestler's career in half. And each of us is responsible for looking into half of a wrestler's career and finding out interesting tidbits, interesting matchups that we might not be aware of, and also covering like the career highlights. And then when we get together to watch these videos, each of us have half of that wrestler's career that we've studied and half that we haven't. So then we'll get to learn new stuff and kind of react to that. And then our viewers, will get to learn more about that wrestler and get a full idea of their career. So yeah, I think it's going to be a pretty cool series.
Yeah, bit of an all around.
Yeah, if you haven't figured out from the title of this video or our overlay right here, put together by Billy, think you did a pretty big up job. We are doing this week. We are looking into the career of Drew McIntyre.
Yep.
So yeah, currently I think at least in WWE's mind, their biggest face.
Yeah.
All right. I'm gonna hand it off to you, and you can go ahead and start us off on the career of Drew McIntyre. Fancy cut or something.
Right. We'll dissolve or something.
I don't edit these videos. That's him.
I don't know. I'll think of something.
With that in mind, allow me to introduce you from Scotland. Here is Drew McIntyre.
In the beginning, so Drew started training when he was 15 years old at the now defunct Frontier Wrestling Alliance Academy. They're stationed in London, and the promotion kind of lives on now in the XWA, which they've been stop-start but kind of consistently active since 2014. And the academy that he trained at also had a hand in training guys like CM Punk, AJ Styles, and Rockstar Spud, who, for those unfamiliar, is Drake Maverick in WWE, among many other well-known names. So once he was deemed ready, basically, he debuted in British Championship Wrestling in 2003, and after a little more training to kind of get him a personality and everything, his first character, the Drew Galloway, that's Thee, a traditional cocky heel with a manager, debuted in the promotion. So he kind of had that cocky heel all the way through.
Was he like Triple H? Was he like Hunter Hearst Helmsley?
That was the first thing I thought. I couldn't find anything specifically on like how he.
I mean,
was,
he's got the look for it.
But,
in his younger days, he totally looks like he looks like a younger Triple H almost.
He kind of does.
Hair slicked back like that.
The Scottish blue blood.
Oh, that works too.
That would actually work. That does work.
I mean, I'm not sure how fitting it is with Scotland. I don't want to make any appropriations or anything like that. Right. But like Scottish blue blood, like I mean, like
that could have worked.
One of Scotland's colors is blue, so
yeah. So after a few months in the promotion, he wound up getting his first BCW Heavyweight Championship reign. It was bestowed upon him by his manager. The champion, like the prior champion, wound up getting fired, so the title was vacated. So Drew wound up getting it, which sparked his first proper feud with a guy by the name of Stevie Knight, who was obviously upset with the way Drew wound up just having the title bestowed upon him. I wound up seeing a lot of parallels with like how he started and then how he went to WWE to begin with, kind of being bestowed stuff. But he was upset with how Drew's reign began. And in the first match for the title, Drew wound up losing the belt and then got a non-title win back overnight shortly thereafter. They wound up staying separated for a few months and then met in a King of BCW tournament, which Knight knocked Drew out of that tournament, which kind of marked the end of that feud. But kind of first proper feud, he started as a champion. So, kind of interesting there. And then moving on into 2004, he had a series of matches against kind of U.S. legends who kind of made their name in WWE. So he wound up having a match against the Honky Tonk Man, a tag team match. I can't remember who his team member was, but he had a match against Marty Jannetty and Highlander, who was a modern wrestler. And then he drew a double countout against D'Lo Brown. So not much success against the Legends, but to kind of get a good kind of rub from them, so to speak.
Were these in indies, just various indies across the states?
Yeah, no,
and then,
they were in BCW, I believe.
Oh, BCW, okay.
Yeah.
And then what time frame was this? I'm not very familiar with BCW. So
yeah, this was mid 04, kind of early to mid 2004. After he lost the world title, he kind of milled around for a couple months and then started those kind of series throughout 2004. And then in 2005, he had kind of it was basically a 2-match feud that stretched from May to November, and he and a guy named Jay Phoenix, they wound up splitting the series 1-1. And then he wound up making more regular appearances on Irish Whip Wrestling heading into 2005-2006, which is where he kind of really got like a big name for himself and more than likely what drew the eye of WWE. So when he got into IWW, he debuted on their Whiplash TV show. He lost his first 2 matches against Sheamus O'Shaughnessy, who's a recurring character in this story. Sheamus in WWE right now. And Madman Manson. He lost to both of them. And these 2 losses started his first feud against Madman Manson and kind of planted the seeds for his long-term rivalry against Sheamus that still kind of exists to this day.
Yeah.
So, because they just, I think a few months ago, were kind of a team on WWE programming, and then Sheamus turned on him and all that happened.
Yeah. That was the build. That was towards the build for Mania.
Yeah.
Honestly, I was kind of expecting more. I know people were kind of up in the air about what was going to happen for Mania.
Yeah.
Drew ended up that he faced I think he faced Sheamus at Fastlane or at Elimination Chamber. No, Elimination Chamber. He was in the Chamber match.
Okay.
Yeah, he faced I think he faced Sheamus at Fastlane, and then went on to challenge Lashley.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Oh, excuse me. So against Manson, kind of the feud there. Galloway, he was going as Drew Galloway, obviously. He lost a series of handicap and tag matches against kind of various combinations that Manson threw at him. Drew had to find teammates. Sometimes he went in alone. He wound up picking up 1 win in the midst of all of this. This is kind of important for his first title match. So the feud culminated in Galloway versus Manson in a pretty brutal street fight. That Galloway wound up eventually losing, but gained the respect of Manson and the fans and everything. So this wound up earning him a shot the night after against Sheamus for the IWW World title. He had only won 1 match in the promotion so far.
I was gonna say, when you said a pretty brutal street fight, I thought that was like a gimmick street fight name, like a Chicago street fight, a Brooklyn brawl, and you have a pretty brutal street fight.
I'm trying to think.
Although that doesn't sound too Irish. That sounds more like an English.
Yeah, like a gentleman.
Or what WWE would call an English street fight.
Yeah,
a pretty brutal
street fight. So his first match against Sheamus for the IWW World title was on January 28th of 2005, and he wound up losing this match and then proceeded to basically chase the title for 8 months straight. He fought month after month, getting title shot after title shot. Like, he had 6 title shots, lost all of them, and he just couldn't seal the deal until 8 months later to the day on August 28th where he beat Sheamus for the IWW World Title, and that was basically Sheamus's send-off match. I believe he went to WWE Developmental after that. So Drew kind of sent Sheamus to WWE, so to speak. And the feud itself, right at the beginning, it took on a patriotic feel. They kind of mirrored the old firm football rivalry between the Glasgow Rangers and Glasgow Celtic, which is, I wound up doing a little bit of research on this. It's a feud so deeply embedded in Scottish culture that, like, there's, like, part of the cultural division in the country is rooted in this rivalry. Like, it goes super in depth into this, like, into the history of how Scotland was settled to begin with, and, like, conflicts between the native Scots and the Brits who moved there and the Irish people who moved there. Like, it's super interesting. I want to research it more. I just didn't have the time to go completely into depth for that right now. But it was, they wound up kind of playing off of that, where Drew was kind of chasing Sheamus for 8 months. And then...
Wow.
Yeah.
One thing I kind of wonder about that is, like, were they playing the crowds that were... Or, like... Because you said, like, it's a football rivalry, so, like, I'm assuming it's, like, different areas, or is it, like, different, like, almost like not just different people living in the same area?
It's kind of like, so I believe it was Rangers. So the Glasgow Rangers are kind of more represented by, like, more the native Scottish people, kind of are fans of that club, and then the Irish Scots and British Scots are fans of Glasgow Celtic. So they kind of, I don't know specifically how they played to it. I just wound up finding out that they played to the rivalry, basically. So kind of earning, I'm assuming, cheers and boos based on wherever the shows were at the time.
Yeah, that's the main thing I was thinking, is like, what were crowds like, or were they just like certain, were there more? Because I mean, like, having the chase and, like, knowing kind of, like, the character that Sheamus can portray, how Sheamus goes, and how good what situation Sheamus is good in. It feels like Drew's kind of the face and kind of the heel.
He I believe he was the face in this scenario, like, chasing down the heel Irishman.
But then the Lions were likely a bit, like, altered based on, like, where they might have been, or, like, what the crowd might have been more of, or they might have been in lands that were more, like, native Scots, or, like, a lot of their shows might have been in areas where there was more native Scots, and it was okay most of the time. But that's a really interesting thing to think about.
It was something interesting. Like, I definitely want to do a bit more research on it. But Drew held the title until January of 2007, and then was forced to relinquish it. He had kind of booking conflicts. He wasn't able to defend the title frequently enough or appear frequently enough on IWW TV, and he was also balancing university during this time, so he has a master's degree in criminology. Figured I'd note that here. He was balancing all of that while still being a world champion on a televised wrestling program and everything, which is just insane. So, also, though, for those booking conflicts and stuff, during his time on IWW, on their TV channel, obviously, he was taking other bookings. You can't, especially in the early mid-2000s, you couldn't really make a living off of just one thing of independent wrestling, much at all. So in December of 2006, he wound up winning his second BCW heavyweight title, legitimately this time. He won a match. He defeated Highlander in an I Quit match at No Blood, No Sympathy 4, and then vacated the title in September of 2007, a few months after he vacated the IWW title, because he wound up relocating to the U.S. Why, you ask? Because he was signed by the Big Dub. He wound up debuting for... Actually, hang on. Before I get to that, something very important. He debuted At Insane Championship Wrestling's inaugural show on October 15th, 2006, he won a triple threat 30-minute Iron Man match to become the first ever ICW champion and held that thing for 280 days. He wound
Triple threat Iron Man match. That's interesting. Who was it with?
Oh God, I didn't write that down.
I can give Cage Match a quick look. Let's see.
Yeah.
That was Alan Grogan and Darkseid. And I believe Darkseid would go on to beat him before he left.
Yeah, because he wound up losing it.
And he was the longest reigning champion. I think he held it for like 1,000 days or something.
Oh, geez.
It's kind of what you get with, which is kind of, but I mean also that's kind of what you get with smaller indie promotions.
Oh yeah.
Is just like really long range. It's all about the defenses. That's one thing that New Japan has taught me, is that it's all about defenses.
Yep. And he wound up debuting with WWE on the October 12th, 2007 edition of SmackDown. He kind of jumped around a little bit in the first couple months he was there, and then was moved on to FCW. So he was
I was going to say.
Yeah. He was established as a heel initially with Dave Taylor as an on-screen mentor / manager. And then he wound up moving to Raw in early 2008. I believe he was drafted there. And then was separated from Taylor. He beat Charlie Haas on Heat. I didn't even know Heat was still like a program they did in 2008. Like, I honestly...
That is kind of crazy.
Like, I always associate Heat with like Attitude Era, not... end of Ruthless Aggression. But basically right after that, he was moved down to Florida Championship Wrestling. He had a short reign with Stu Sanders, who is Stu Bennett, Wade Barrett, as FCW Florida Tag Team Champions. They had 2 reigns in total in FCW as tag champions. And then Drew had a solo reign with where's my spot? Here it is. He had a solo reign with the FCW World Heavyweight Championship on March 9th. And then I can't recall if he lost it or if he just had to relinquish it, because he returned to the main roster in August of that same year. So his initial feud on SmackDown was with R-Truth. This is kind of his intro. He was, quote, not in WWE to party, as he viewed R-Truth was. So all of the matches in the feud started with preemptive attacks from Drew. He just beat Truth up before the bell. Very, very heelish tactics from Drew McIntyre. And the Future Shock DDT, which I just love as a finisher name, I just think it's a really cool name, was originally called the Scott Drop, which is not as cool sounding of a name as Future Shock.
Yeah. This was before the whole Vince McMahon Chosen One angle?
Yeah, that happened in this angle. So Vince came out and delivered the whole Chosen One promo on September 25th. So about a month after he came out and started beating up R-Truth. And then he wound up beating Truth at Hell in a Cell 2009 in less than 5 minutes to kind of end the feud. And he won with the Future Shock DDT.
It is kind of funny that Vince comes out and he's like, this is the guy. This is my chosen one for the WWE, and it's the guy feuding with R-Truth.
The guy feuding with R-Truth.
But let's put some respect on that name. That is former NWA champion Ron the Truth Killings.
That is very true. Former NWA champion.
Also TNA tag champ with Pac-Man Jones.
Yeah.
It's K-Quick.
Yeah.
Or was that as K-Quick?
I think that was K-Quick.
God, R-Truth's career is weird.
It's so weird.
That's got to be some. Let's not give the goods away, because that's going to be a subscriber special.
That's got to be another one. Like, we got to do one on R-Truth, because good lord, the man has jumped around everywhere. He had a team with Goldust. Right. He had a team with Kofi Kingston.
Anyways, let's get back. Let's get back to things.
The Chosen One. He is now officially the Chosen One. Guy who beat R-Truth in less than 5 minutes at Hell in a Cell 2009. His next feud was with Finlay. There wasn't really any, even though Finlay had the
Oh man, we did
Irish
Finley dirty
stuff.
as well.
I know. They had, obviously Finley has the Irish stuff. They didn't do like a Scottish Irish feud really with Finley. It was just kind of the same as the Truth feud, where Drew beat him up before the matches, and then the final match of the feud ended with Drew winning in less than 2 minutes with the Future Shock DDT.
If our Truth he was saying I don't like to party, at least with Finley he wasn't saying I don't like to fight.
Yeah, that's very true. That would
Finley
not
and he likes
fit.
to fight.
So his next big thing, really, that he did, he was on Miz's Survivor Series team. So this was after Miz and Morrison broke up on ECW. Mm-hmm. Morrison wound up winning the IC title. They didn't have the tag belts anymore. So it culminated in a Survivor Series match, which I had no clue about. So
this was
it was
back when Survivor Series was the actual storytelling paper, not the one part of the year where the brands go head to head and stuff.
Yeah, it's like instead of
Raw and SmackDown.
Yeah, instead of basically just being a reskinned bragging rights, even though bragging rights was originally just a reskinned Survivor Series. But anyway, he was they had, because Miz and Morrison were an ECW tag team, they had people from both brands on their teams. So Drew was the only SmackDown survivor against Team Morrison. They wound up losing. But Drew was the only SmackDown survivor. He was the last one pinned. So that earned him a shot against Morrison's IC title. And this is when the picture in the middle happens. Drew McIntyre's first and, I believe, only, at this point still, Intercontinental title reign. He won it at TLC 2009 in December of that year. And then,
I just realized that Drew is a Triple Crown right now.
Yeah, he is. Because he had tag titles later. I'll get to that in a little bit.
Spoilers.
Yeah, light spoilers.
He's actually also had the tag title in his recent run as well.
Yeah, he did.
Later.
Yeah, with Dolph. So he had an undefeated streak. After he won the title, he wound up losing to Kane in a Money in the Bank qualifying match, and he had lost a couple other smaller matches. But thanks to his good buddy Mr. McMahon, Vince wound up kind of in storyline forcing Teddy to expunge those losses. Like, Drew didn't lose those matches. He's still undefeated.
I kind of just wanted to say the word expunge, but...
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So he wound up qualifying for... This was when Money in the Bank was still only at WrestleMania. So he wound up qualifying for Money in the Bank by having a squash match against the local talent. His first official loss was to The Undertaker 1 week before the Money in the Bank ladder match at WrestleMania 26. So he wound up going on...
Can't mess with the dead man's record.
Oh, no. Especially when he was going on to retire my favorite wrestler of all time at that show. Poor Sean.
Those darn veterans never putting over the old new talent.
Putting over the new guys. And then Drew was, in the months following, he started beating up Matt Hardy a lot. I believe this was because Matt was in that Money in the Bank match as well. I believe this was kind of a carryover from stuff they did in that match. Drew was attacking Matt Hardy just every which way on every episode of SmackDown, so he was stripped of the IC title by Teddy Long. Vince wound up reinstating it the following week, because it's like, why'd you strip him of the belt? He's Drew McIntyre. Of course he's still champion. So he wound up holding on to it until Over the Limit 2010, where he lost it to Kofi Kingston. And this is kind of where stuff starts going downhill on the Drew McIntyre train for his first run in WWE, because there was also a force emerging that we could do another series of this on around 2010-2011. The Nexus, the original Nexus. They wound up showing up. They beat up Vince McMahon, writing him off of TV.
That's how this ties in.
Yep. It wound up ending. It wound up ending his preferential treatment on SmackDown because Vince wasn't there. So Drew kind of fell on hard times as a character, and then also in real life, he was written off TV in June. His visa wound up expiring, so they just kind of used that as the real life version. Teddy was like, hey, you're suspended because your visa's expired. So 2 weeks later, he got that figured out, got that taken care of. He was reinstated. He wound up later winning the WWE Tag Team Championships with dashing Cody Rhodes, of all people.
Oh, yeah. I feel like I remember.
I did not know this was a thing at all, and then I also didn't know that this team existed. The people they lost to them to was John Cena and David Otunga, because this was the next storyline.
I just know that one from like Cultaholic or What Culture or something, doing a list on the weirdest tag team champions.
Yep.
John Cena and David
Otunga. And that was in October 2010 at Bragging Rights. Hey, shout out to Bragging Rights.
But for the record, the Cody Rhodes and the Drew McIntyre pairing, that does make a good bit of sense. I mean, look at this. Look at this. Look at this specimen.
Like, seriously, like
right here.
Over here. Like him and dashing Cody Rhodes just makes sense.
And he's always kind of like the muscle to Cody's. He's like the Cody's Shawn Michaels.
Yeah. So after that, he lost the tag team titles, and there weren't many victories, unfortunately, for Drew after this point. He was the last man eliminated from the Survivor Series 2010 team. He was eliminated by The Big Show. Eliminated from the only 40-man Royal Rumble in 2011, also by The Big Show. And then after this, this is just a weird storyline to read about. He started trying to woo Kelly, like trying to get her to go out with him, even though he was a heel and a dick as a character. So this went on for months. He kept getting denied. He was eliminated from the World Heavyweight Championship Elimination Chamber in 2011 by Kane, which then kind of freed him up to wrap up the story with Kelly. So it ended in a tag match where he teamed with Vicky Guerrero against Kelly and Edge, because this was also in the storyline where Vicky and Edge were breaking up. So Vicky was trying to get like revenge on Edge. Drew's been like a background character to all of these different like major feuds that were going on in the late 2010s.
God, remembering 2010s. Vicky Guerrero and Edge being together, that's kind of weird.
I know. Because that was... Oh, God. Because I do remember that, because I mainly had watched, the first bits I was watching WWE was like late 2000s, early 2010s. So I do remember that storyline at least a little bit. So it was kind of weird being like how those intertwined, at least kind of. So he was then drafted to Raw after this. He then lost his Return to Raw match against Kofi Kingston and was rarely seen on TV after this. He went on Main Event Superstars, was kind of a mainstay on there. He beat Justin Gabriel for a SmackDown contract on Superstars. And then when he went back there, Teddy Long said he needed to keep winning to stay on SmackDown, kind of continuing the tension there, because Teddy Long doesn't forget. So he then proceeds to go on an 8-match losing streak, and Teddy fires him. But it gets better. The plot thickens. He is reinstated by John.
I was gonna say, isn't this where this is going? Team Johnny versus.
Yep,
Team Johnny versus
one of the worst matches on WrestleMania 28. Team Johnny versus Team Teddy. Gets to run that happened at 28. Shows. Yep,
that happened on 28.
I only remember because we bought it live because my dad wanted to see Cena Rock, because he grew up and The Rock was the biggest thing. So that was. I mean,
by all means, 28 was a pretty good Mania.
It was fairly good. Like, this is barely close to the end of his first WWE run. After that Team Johnny, Team Teddy thing, Team Johnny won. He only showed up on the main roster, or like the main roster shows, basically in squash matches, which sucks. He was still on Superstars and main event at this time. He had a couple NXT appearances after they rebranded to what we know them as today, instead of the game show and everything, after like FCW became NXT. He was defeated in the Gold Rush tournament by Seth Rollins, who went on to win that and become the first ever NXT champion.
He was in the Gold Rush. I didn't know that.
Yeah, I didn't either. I was like, oh yeah, he was.
Was he Slater in it? Because I know Jinder Mahal was in it. I don't think he would have been in it.
Slater might have been in it, because I know Slater was in FCW for a long time.
I'll look at that now.
But while you're looking at that, he was also, a month or so later, defeated by Bo Dallas in a Fatal 4-Way elimination match for a number 1 contendership spot, which I believe Bo ended up winning. So, interesting bit there.
Oh, he wasn't. Bo Dallas was, which is a thing, but...
Because I think Bo was a former SCW champion.
That's a weird tournament. God, that's such a weird tournament. Oh my gosh. All right, let's not get distracted again.
But yeah, so he was defeated by Bo Dallas in that Fatal 4-Way number 1 contender elimination match. And then on one fateful day, we mentioned Heath Slater before, September 21st, 2012, 3MB was formed. They still lost a lot. Like, that was kind of their thing.
If you want to hear more about 3MB, you'll have to tune into the next part.
Yes. So, there was a highlight, which I'm pretty sure you'll touch on a bit more. WLC at Extreme Rules was I really like that match. Like, WLC is a great match. Like, at Extreme Rules 2014 in May, and then just a month later, he was released from his WWE contract, June 12th, 2014. But that is all I have for the first half of Drew McIntyre's career. So, we will see you all in part 2. Make sure to like, subscribe, ring the bell, tell your friends, spread the URL. Still on that road to 100 subscribers. We got to get that custom URL so we can spread the channel even more. And then make sure you stay tuned to part 2, which should be coming out either a day after this or 2 days after this, depending on how long it takes me to edit everything.
Where I will tell you more about Drew's second run in the Indies, going up to today, where he is one of the top stars on Raw and has been a Universal Champion. Or no, wait, WWE Champion. Finally claiming the big one.
The prophecy fulfilled.
For now. Yep.
So,
for now, I'm Austin.
I'm Billy.
We'll see you on the next episode of Bell to Bell.